You're listening to Healing Voices Project, where we share stories and the latest information from people who fight addiction every day. I'm Mike Torville, your host and author of Voices from the Fallen. Thank you for listening, for following, and most of all, for sharing with people you care about. Make your voice count too. Hello, everybody. Thanks for joining Healing Voices Project. We're glad to have you back, and we're also glad to have our guest, John Giordano. My guest today is a very interesting guy, and I've just recently read his book, and we'll talk about that. But John, thanks for coming on today. Appreciate your time.
Always my pleasure to help God's kids.
Thank you. And now, before I get into the full introduction, I just want to say that today, we have a lot of guests on our show, people who share their stories, who overcame adversity, who overcame drug addiction and other challenges, and found a new purpose in life. And often, these people have found talents and skills they never knew they had. And to me, those are the best stories, because some of these people who have been maybe on the verge of suicide, maybe overdose, ended up in the hospital and didn't find life worth living, but then overcame it and now are going on to help other people. Some people have gone on to write books. Some have become speakers and advocates. Some have worked in recovery centers, and some even opened up the recovery centers. And some people we've had on the show have even had children who've struggled through addiction themselves. And now that's a lot, but I will say every single one of those aspects, everything single one of those applies to John Giordano. John, you've been through it all. And now with 37 years of sobriety, you've got a lot.
Now.
38.
38. I don't want to lose a year. Hard to get it.
I'll give you credit for that. Yeah. In addition to that, and I talked about, what John has done and written books, and he's a speaker, but I want to mention a few of the books I just read. The last most recent book is The Kid from the South Bronx Who Never Gave Up. And it's a wonderful read. And I told John earlier that I felt like he personally read it to me, which was great. I like your style of writing. It's very conversational, and I really get a lot out of that. But the other books, which is worth mentioning, certainly, one is Proven Holistic Treatment for Addiction and Chronic Relapse, How to Beat Your Addictions and Live a Quality Life. And John is a co-author of Molecular Neurobiology of Addiction Recovery, the 12 Steps Program and Fellowship. And John's also been published in numerous medical publications related to addiction. Now, I will also mention John's a national karate champion. Now, that's important to mention, because I think the karate was very critical in helping John through some pretty tough times. We'll get into a lot here. So John, again, I just had to go through that and give some context. Thanks again for coming.
Oh, absolutely. Well, like I said before we were on air, I just like to read something from the book. I wrote the book to help motivate people.
Mm-hmm.
I'm going to give a little quick background before I read this piece. I only went to the 9th grade. I got left back in the 6th grade. That was traumatic for me. I got molested when I was 8 and a half. My father went to jail. He sold heroin, and he went to jail when I was 8. I got molested when I was 8 and a half by some boys in the neighborhood. And part of me, for a moment in time, but split second, enjoyed it, and then got shame and guilt and fear that my family would find out. I went through that. And then at 9 years old, my female babysitter molested me. She was 14, I was 9. That was confusing for me. I wind up in gangs. My family's like a mafia type family. My grandfather was a Shylock. Those are the kind of guys that loan you money at a high rate.
Mm-hmm.
Of interest. If you don't pay, you pay one way or the other. My uncle was a hitman, and he threw my wedding when I was 20, and the caterer insulted him in front of the family. So the next morning he killed him. So wow. I mean, if you wanted to, when I do lectures with addicts and they go, well, you don't know my family, I said, I tell you what, I'll loan you mine for a while. Let me know how you do.
I guess so.
So,
right.
these are some of the things, and I wind up becoming, just like I said I wouldn't become. I became a drug dealer. I used to do collection work for the smugglers. I used to teach one of the cartel's bodyguards in Colombia. I would teach their bodyguards, self-defense and martial arts and all this other stuff. I did a lot of stuff. I used to do collection work for the smugglers. If you didn't pay them, I was with my group of guys. We would go there and collect the money.
Hmm.
So I did a lot of nefarious things, and then my whole life changed around when I got into recovery. And the way I got into recovery is my family did an intervention on me. That means when a group gets together with a therapist and they talk you into going to treatment.
Mm-hmm.
Well, I'm wondering who's doing an intervention on my family if they're doing an intervention on me. So,
they're the ones that had the problem. It wasn't you, right?
Right. It wasn't me. They had the problem too. Let's all go to treatment.
Yeah.
But anyway, I wound up going to treatment, and I wound up having. I resisted a lot. I didn't even understand what treatment was. I wouldn't even get high with these kind of people. I used to say, and I had a lot of different experiences there. When I cleared up, I had a couple of spiritual awakening. I'm not going to go into the whole story because I want you to read the book. But and then my whole brain changed because I woke up, okay, from the drugs and the alcohol and the everything. And I started to clear up and realize how many people I was hurting, my family, myself.
Can I ask you, John, not to interrupt, but what was it that woke you up? Was it something someone said or did? What pointed
You know what? It's interesting you said that. Now that you say that, it's interesting because what happened was I was in there on December 4th as my clean date. And it was Christmas Eve time, right? I was in there about 2 weeks, and I wanted to go home for Christmas Eve. I said, I want to see my family. I don't want my kids to see me in a hospital, blah, 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 blah. I was lying. I wanted to go home because my friends would give me Christmas cards with cocaine in it, right? That's why I really wanted to go home.
That was your motivation. So, yeah.
Right. That was a motivation.
Yeah.
Remember, addicts are selfish, self-centered, and highly manipulative. So they said I couldn't go. Well, I don't know about you or anybody else that's listening to this, but I never got angry. I got rageful. Okay. And it didn't just go away. So I ran into my room in the treatment center. I punched the door, and I'm in there, and I'm angry, and I'm crying, and I'm saying, what am I doing here? I got to leave this place. Screw these people. And then my therapist, it was in my head. He goes, hey, John, you ever pray on your knees? So I said, I got calluses on my knees. I'm a recovering Catholic, I told him. So I said, what do you mean? God doesn't listen to me? How about if I'm in the closet? Can he hear me?
Yeah.
Angry, hurt, shame, all this guilt, all this stuff, building up inside of me. So I said, you know what? He says, how about humility? So I said, humility. So I says, yeah, okay. That's in my head. I'm having this conversation, by the way. So I says, you know what? I'm in so much pain. Let me give it a shot. So I couldn't get my knee down, Mike. And that's the weirdest thing that happened to me. It wouldn't go down. It was like I said, what the hell's going on with my leg?
But you never had a problem with your knees before.
No. I didn't have a problem.
Right, yeah.
Then I had to push my knee down. Then I pushed my other knee down. And for the first time in my life, I prayed, not for what I just prayed, this, whatever you want me to do, I will do. Just take this pain away from me. Well, let me tell you something. It disappeared like it never, ever was there. Now, I can tell you, this never happened to me. So I was real sick. So I tried to get it back. Didn't come back. So that was my first spiritual awakening and treatment.
Wow.
My second spiritual awakening treatment was, then I started to snap out. I started participating in group. I started doing all those things. Then they had a thing called exiting, where the doctors, the nurses, the therapists all get together in a room and they sit you down and they go over your progress, and they see if you need more treatment, long-term treatment, another couple of weeks or whatever. So everybody was saying, oh, John's doing so much better. He shares in group. And so the main doctor, that was the head doctor, said he's full of crap. Well, you could take the kid out of the street, but you can't take the street out of the kid. I blew up. I cursed at her. I called her every name in the book. And then I got even more stupid. I turned around and said, you know what? I can kill all of you in this room. You'll never get out alive. So the doctor turned around, looked at me and said, John, all we want to do is help you. I busted out into tears, and I felt like about an inch tall, and I ran out of the room. And that's what made the difference in my whole thing. They gave me a couple extra weeks in treatment, and I decided to wanted to be a therapist. I wanted to help people, you know.
Well,
And
after you saw the compassion, I think the genuine compassion after you threatened to kill them, or at least said you you had the ability to do that. They said, yeah, but still, all we want to do is help you. And that must
right.
have really turned you
And let me
around a
tell you,
little
it
bit.
was like an arrow that went into my heart. Okay.
Yeah.
How do you fight with somebody who just goes up, get out of the way?
Well, because you, by the way, have gotten in a lot of fights before that. So you weren't used to that kind of reaction, right?
No.
Right.
No. And street kids and addicts don't trust anyone.
Yeah.
But there's a certain intuitiveness that you get when you're in the streets, and I could tell that they really meant what they were saying because they just didn't say things; they actually did things.
Mm-hmm.
Pulling you aside, talking to you from sincerity. And I said, "Wow, this is like really weird." I went back to school because I only went to the ninth grade, so I went back to school and got my my certifications and all my other stuff. I went to college to get licensed, but they were teaching stuff that was already outdated. By the time I got out of school, it would have been antiquated. So I got my certifications, all the things. I'm a master's in NLP, neuro-linguistic program. I do EMDR, which is a technique they use for trauma. I'm a hypnotherapist. I'm a certified criminal justice specialist. I'm a mitigation specialist.
You're a chaplain too.
I'm a hypnotherapist. I'm
Yeah.
also a chaplain for the police department. And here's a guy that used to be in meetings, and I used to say, F God. I don't want to hear about God. I didn't come here to join a new religion. I won't even get high with you people. What am I doing here? I want to use when I go to these meetings,
Yeah.
But I kept going.
Yeah, yeah.
And I never relapsed. I don't know how that happened, but that was the truth. And then I became one of the leading experts in addiction. My son almost died from the disease. And I watched him put charcoal down his throat. He OD'd. And and that's when I was clean.
Mm-hmm.
So it was like, I don't even know how to explain. You always want a son, or you always want a child, and you're watching them slip away.
Mm.
It was the worst night. I can't even imagine when people lose their kids, what it's like.
Yeah, it's horrible.
There's nothing you can say to anybody.
Right.
I'll be honest with you.
I've had too many friends.
And the bottom line is that I had to go to a lot of funerals and talk to them about those things.
By the way, how is your son doing now?
Well, he's 18 years clean. It's the best son I ever had in my entire would have it in my life.
Nice.
If I had to design a kid, I would have fell short. Same with all my kids.
Yeah.
And and they all went through drugs. They're selling drugs, doing drugs. And I just, like he got arrested, and he called me up from jail. He goes, Dad, he was 15. I got arrested. I said, oh, okay, good. So he said, well, you got to get me out of here. I said, no, I'll see you in court. Goodbye. Yeah. Hung up.
It's tough to do. Yeah.
Yeah. So we went to court. The judge says, the judge knew me because I was always in and out of courts with other clients.
Mm-hmm.
He says, John, we'll remand him to your custody. And I said, no, Your Honor, he's an addict. If I may make a suggestion, mandate him to treatment and house arrest. He says, you got it. So that's what happened.
Wow. Okay.
And then what happened was after he went to treatment and he relapsed again. And I told him, look, man, he started dealing drugs again. And I said, listen, either you stay here, stop doing drugs, go to therapy, or you have to leave. So he said, F you, you think you're a tough old man, I'll straighten you out. So I looked at him, I smiled, I gave him a smack, knocked him up in the air, knocked him on his butt, right?
Yeah.
And he still remembers that, by the way. He
Good.
says, Dad, you scared the hell out of me. I said, well, sometimes talk is great.
Yeah.
Some people say, oh, you shouldn't touch them. Well, I don't agree with that. Sometimes they need that, especially if they're addicts. All right. It's called a wake-up call.
Mm-hmm.
Well, let me tell you, I didn't sleep for a month. He was out of my house. He decided to leave. Every time the phone rang, I thought he was either dead in the hospital or in jail.
Yeah.
But eventually came back. He went back to therapy, went to treatment, and I got the best son in the world.
It's wonderful. Yeah.
So, I'm the fortunate one. Other people are not so fortunate.
Right.
So here, I want to read this part of the book, and now you guys got a little bit understanding of where I'm coming from. And it's called The Kid from the South Bronx Who Never, Ever Gave Up. Well, here is my roadmap for positive change. All right. There is one thing in this world, one special lesson, one constant that has guided me through the turbulent waters of life. This infinite rule, which most people know but ignore, or who simply do not follow their life lessons. That is, no matter what, no matter the circumstances, the obstacles, the people that get in our way, or things that slow us down, follow this one simple rule. Never give up on your dreams, never let go of your passions, and especially never give up on yourself or a God of your understanding. My name is John Giordano, and I'm a recovering addict who turned $300 into $45 million. I was blessed to become extremely successful, and I'd like to share my story with you. This is how my life was transformed and how I was saved from falling into the abyss of hell. And by following this one rule and learning how to have a life worth living.
Great message.
And that's what I share with people.
That stuck with me, by the way, because your book begins and ends with that message, and everything in between just demonstrates exactly what you've overcome. You've had business partners that didn't work out so well. You've had
Wasn't just business,
relationships.
but it was my doctor and my therapist.
Right. Yeah. People you trusted.
Right.
And overcome so much adversity. But that's the whole point. Your success is from the fact that you just never gave up. And you had all kinds of reasons to.
Well, and what I share with people now that I'm I'm one of the leading experts also on ibogaine, which is, I don't know if you're familiar with ibogaine, Mike.
No.
Okay.
Tell us about that.
Ibogaine is a bush from West Africa that's used as a rite of passage from the Weedy tribe. There was a gentleman called Howard Lutzoff. He was a heroin addict. He was looking for a new high. So he went to Gabron, all right, and he found ibogaine. He did ibogaine, and he was doing about 10 bags of heroin a day. Heavy heroin addict.
Wow. Yeah.
All right. He woke up the next morning detoxed and no cravings. And he said, "What is this?" He said, "I can make money with this." So he opened up a program in Panama. Then he got a hold of Dr. Deborah Mash. Dr. Damash is a neuromolecular scientist at the University of Miami School of Medicine. She was the head of the Brain Bank and the Alzheimer's Foundation. She got interested in what he was doing. She went to Panama and she started working with him. And, well, it didn't obviously work out. She opened up a place in St. Kitts because ibogaine is a Schedule I drug here in the United States, and it's a psychedelic. So it was illegal here to do. So we opened up a place in St. Kitts.
Mm-hmm.
And she did research with this also. Matter of fact, she just came back from England. She was doing a research project in England, what they call the FDA trials, to see if they can bring it over here.
Okay.
It is the best detox and the best starting point for addicts and alcoholics that you can possibly do. What happens is first of all, we check them out medically. We just make sure we put our 24-hour heart monitor on them. We give them a toxicology test to see what's on board, because certain drugs interfere with this and can cause damage, or can cause you to die. It's just like any other treatment or detox. You can't use certain medications on top of other medications.
Right.
Right. So what happens with that is that my job was to give them their intention. So intention is very important, and integrative coaching is extremely important with people going to do substances that include psychedelics, because it enters into your subconscious, not your conscious mind.
Mm-hmm.
So my job was to help them extrapolate out information, okay, before they went into the journey. All right. This way they can have an intent and go over some of their traumas, so it's in their frontal lobes when they go to do the journey of ibogaine. We would put them in a bed. We would put eye shades on them, put a headset on them with music, keep them in a containment field, put an IV in their arm in case there was any kind of an event, heart monitor on them, have a nurse by their bed. And then we would give them what is known as a test dose. And then in 45 minutes, and we saw they tolerated it, then we would give them a full dose.
Mhm.
Then they would go out for about 8, 10, 12 hours, depending if they're fast metabolizer, slow metabolizer, and how their liver functioned. When they would come out, my job was to help them to understand what they saw in their subconscious. They came out detoxed, and they came out without any cravings and ready for treatment.
How long does it last?
Now, everyone's different, of course.
Mhm.
We know from us with research, anywhere from 90 to 120 days, those feelings, but it's not a silver bullet. You need to go to treatment right afterwards to deal with all the behaviors that you created during your time as an addict.
Right. You can't ignore that, obviously. Right.
Right.
Yeah.
So then you work on it that way. But this gives you a good heads up.
Okay.
Gives you about a year of treatment before you even get to treatment, by the way. Regular detox is not detox. If you look up the word detox, it means to detoxify,
Hmm.
not to put other drugs and chemicals like that. You know, these are plant medicine, these are chemicals and all kinds of stuff they're putting in. Then they get them stuck on Suboxone, especially the opiate addicts. So they give them an opioid and to get off the opiates. I mean, you know, the pharmaceutical companies are the most disgusting group of people you ever want to meet. You know, but so I became one of the leading experts on plant medicine and psychedelics, and I opened up a clinic, and which I was against, by the way, years ago, with ketamine. Ketamine is an anesthetic, and it used to be a club drug. You should go Special K.
Mm.
But ketamine under low doses, under proper medical supervision and proper integrative counseling and therapy, is incredible for depression and anxiety and addiction and some PTSD.
Hmm.
And we do this at the ketamine clinic of South Florida in Pompano. And let me tell you, the two anesthesiologists who are my partners, that we went partners, these women are unbelievable. They care. It's a caring environment. We do integrative counseling. It's part of the journey. We do group therapy. It's part of the journey. We also do, I don't know, are you familiar with NAD plus?
NAD plus, no.
Okay, NAD plus also helps with depression and anxiety. And are you familiar with the mitochondria?
You're bringing up a lot, John. You know,
But the mitochondria
Mitochondria.
is the engine for each one of your cells.
Okay.
Okay, picture an engine that runs your cells.
Okay.
Okay.
Yep.
Now, as we get older, that NAD plus leaves you, it's an enzyme, so it leaves your body as you age. So it's the fuel for your mitochondria to fuel your cells to repair itself and to grow. So we also do NAD plus with people too. We do nutrients in an IV, but we do what is known as micronutrient testing. So we see what nutrients are deficient or you have too much on a cellular level.
John, before you said you were against it, you resisted it at first, right?
Yes.
With the why did you? Is it because you
Okay,
had a misunderstanding about it?
The
Yeah.
reason I resisted it was
Yeah.
I figured that addicts would come over here just to get high. Okay, well that's
Yeah.
not, we don't get high the way we do it. It's a different kind of thing,
Okay.
right? And what I found out is it's not true. You know, most of anybody that comes to us, I haven't seen an addict yet that came just to get the buzz. Okay. And I
Yeah.
know addicts, I could smell them. Okay. You know, not to say that it doesn't happen, but you see, look, ketamine clinics are opening everywhere. And the problem with it is that people are just interested in the money.
Oh.
I had too many kids die in my arms and too many funerals I've been to. And the desperation of being a parent that knows what it's like to have a sick and suffering addict as a kid.
Mm.
Okay. I would never do that. Okay. I don't care how broke I would be. And we give them now we're adding in neurofeedback to help retrain the brain. Okay. Now, what I'm also adding in is that within another month, We're doing QEEGs. That's where you put a cap on someone's head
Yeah.
and they have electrodes in there and it measures the electrical output of the brain in different quadrants. And what that does, all right, it tells us where you're deficient and where you have too much. And then we give you these exercises, just like you work out in the gym for your brain.
Yeah.
All right, get through videos and all this other kind of stuff to strengthen those areas of the brain and create new connections and new neuron connections in the brain. So I'm into alternative medicine. That's why, who was going to listen to me? Okay. So I got hooked up with Dr. Blum. He's the geneticist who found the addiction gene. Dr. Mash, Dr. Harch, and a whole team of about 15 universities, guys from psychiatrists, clinicians, neuroscientists, and geneticists, and, that I'm on their research team.
Mm-hmm.
So that's why I'm in right now, currently in 79 medical and scientific peer-reviewed journals. And people go, yeah, he's saying that, but really, is he? Go to ResearchGate. ResearchGate is a platform for scientists from all over the world that have their peer-reviewed journals on. All the latest science on that platform. Put my name in, and then you'll see where I am. So without evidence, without any kind of validity, people don't listen to you.
Mm-hmm.
I've lectured almost now to 100 countries. I've been all over the world. Here's a kid from the South Bronx. I went to the 9th grade. Okay, it's like almost comical. And now here I am talking, right? Writing books. If you would have told me this early in recovery, I would have punched you in the face.
Exactly. Well, I think that happens a lot. Not in a million years would you have ever. Now, the first half of your life versus the second half of your life, it's like two entirely different people.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. I always knew it was schizophrenic one way or the other. That's a double personality. I have a multiple personality disorder. I think I figured out.
That's right. Yeah.
But
You like it? Go ahead.
You get really high from helping people.
That almost becomes another addiction, right? Because now you've just been going at this nonstop. This is what moves you now, right?
Yeah, well, you got to be careful when you say addiction, because addiction means you're out of balance.
Okay, all right. Well, you are.
So you know what people ask, Mike?
Yeah.
They ask me, well, how do you know I'm an addict? I said, look, I got a simple way. I could get technical on you, but let's do simplicity, because that's how people, listen.
Right, relate. Yeah.
If you continue to use a substance or a behavior in spite of adverse consequences,
right,
maybe you need to take a look at that.
Yeah.
And that's how I tell people.
Yeah.
I mean, look, if you let's say sex addiction, if you're doing sex, well, sex is not bad, right? Okay, it's great. But if you're doing it with no protection, if you're doing it cheating on your wife or your husband, if you're causing yourself to go with hookers and all this stuff and getting arrested and all these other things, and you can't stop, and you do it anyway, regardless of what happened to you, maybe you got a problem.
Yeah.
Shopping addiction. Oh, I like to shop. So what's wrong with shopping? Oh, nothing. If you're spending money that you're supposed to pay on your rent, then you can't even have any money to put in your gas in your car, but you're buying stuff you don't need because you just want.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe you got a problem.
Right. Yeah. Well, there is a difference. Yeah. But there's a lot of misunderstandings and I think misperceptions about ketamine and other treatment programs that I'm glad you're clearing up and helping out with.
Well, let me tell you something.
Yeah.
First of all, if they look at the science, ketamine grows new neurons in the brain where depression and anxiety come from. That's science. That's not John making this stuff up. Psychedelics had a bad rap. Listen, you know what they used to say about marijuana many years ago? That you could shoot marijuana up and you become addicted. And we used to say, what? Are they nuts? Put branches in your veins? I mean, what are they talking about?
What?
Stupid stuff.
Yeah.
They were so afraid. They knew nothing about addiction. I'm going to tell you how dumb our government is. So sometimes, as you already know, if you're looking at what's going on today.
Pretty obvious. Yeah.
Yeah. In the 1900s, we had a morphine or opiate morphine epidemic because of the Chinese. They came over with with more, with all these different opioids and stuff like that.
Yep.
So guess how they thought they were going to fix it? You have any idea what they did? Oh, they came up with a great idea. Let's give them heroin.
Wow. Wow.
This is what they did.
Wow.
Okay.
Yeah.
And then now we don't, because now we're giving them opioids.
One
So
problem
at
leads
least
to
they're
another.
not
Yeah.
dying. No, they're walking around like zombies. They don't even know where they are. And they're still dying. Anyway, then what's really interesting as treatments went on, when you were a heroin addict years ago, maybe about 20 years ago, you could drink long as you didn't do opiates.
Hmm.
Well, we found out that didn't work very well either.
No.
Okay. So they keep searching for stuff, and you want to hide something from an addict to put it in front of their nose. We have to look at all the things I told you about leaky gut, H. pylori, all this other stuff, right? We have to look at people as whole human beings comprehensively. And until we start doing that and start looking at them psychologically, child work, trauma work, all of this has to be, and family work. It's not, if you don't treat the family, you know what it's like, Mike? It's like you go to the garden, okay, getting all dirty clothes, take a shower, and then you put the dirty clothes back on.
Yeah.
So you don't go too far with that.
Right.
Okay. So it's the same thing with addiction and mental health. You need to teach the other people, the family members, how to deal with it. Most of the time, the family members are sicker than the client.
Yeah, and we find that a lot too, because we talk a lot about on this program too, is what does a family do when they have, you said your family did an intervention on you. You thought they were all the crazy ones. And, and I think a lot of family, we did that with a family member years ago, and none of us really knew what we were doing. We just knew there was a
Right.
problem. And if there was 14 of us, there was 14 different ideas of what to do about it.
That's why you need a therapist to do with you, to organize it. That's what I do, interventions.
Yep.
Yeah. So you need, you need, the right, then you don't need people that are adversarial or people that want to attack the person.
Right.
In the intervention, because you just blow it out of the water.
Make it worse.
Yeah. You just gotta, most of the time, the parents or the family members are enablers or they're codependents, their life revolves around the addict. See, what people don't understand, once you help an addict and they get straight, they get clean and sober, you help a whole family.
Yes.
Because they're addicted to the client.
Yeah. Yeah. And I know us, like many other families, become an enabler without realizing it, without knowing.
Well, because you're afraid that they're going to die.
Yeah.
If you don't help them.
Yeah. Well, it's like when your son, when your son was arrested and you said, okay, stay in jail, see you in court. That was very hard for you to do.
If I didn't have support.
Yeah.
And I wasn't a therapist.
Yeah.
I don't think I would have did it. Because let me tell you something, even with all the support, being a therapist, it was a nightmare all day long, waiting for that fatal call.
Yeah. Every day.
Every day.
Yeah. Yeah.
So when people say, well, I can't do that, I say, well, look, I did it. This is what happened. You could do it. He might die. But I got news for you. I give you an example about people that don't do it. Okay.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
We had a woman whose son, was going to go to treatment, and she decided not to put him in treatment. But we knew who she was, we used to call and check on her. So she says she used to go into the hood and buy heroin for her son, as long as he did it in the house where she was, in case anything happened to him. Okay? Mm-hmm. This is how crazy things get.
Yeah.
Well, guess what? Her son locked the door in his bedroom, shot up, and OD'd in the house and died. So the bottom line is this, okay? You give support when they want support. You can't make people do things they don't want to do.
Mm-hmm.
And, I always tell people in treatment, I say, look, you want to change somebody? Start with you. Let me know how easy it is. Change is the hardest thing human beings do.
Yeah. And again, a lot of people, I say this a lot too, don't know what they don't know. And I think and this is probably why we do this program, why you do what you do, to get the information out there for people to at least be educated about it, for people to say, oh, wait a minute, I learned something and I learned I was doing the opposite of what I should have done.
Right.
And
But see, here's the story.
Hmm.
I always say this to people. Knowledge is power, but without action is worthless.
It's useless. Yeah. Agree. Yeah, I agree.
So,
You know, well, let's talk a little bit about, you have the ketamine clinic, infusion clinic, and you also have the G&G Holistic Addiction Center.
no, I sold that.
You sold that.
2012.
That's the one you sold. Okay.
Right.
And your success rate at the Ketamine and Infusion Center
Very
has
high.
very high. What would you say is the success
I
rate there?
don't, well, I'm only there 2 months. I already expanded it. I already brought in new modalities.
Mm-hmm.
You know, instead of just giving nutrients, we offer them micronutrient testing.
Okay.
So we know on a cellular level where their body is deficient.
Mm-hmm.
And deficiency can cause mental illness. People don't get that part. Also can cause disease. You know, if you lack vitamin C, what do you get? Scurvy.
Mm.
You know, vitamin D helps you with a lot of other things. Your B complexes help you with also a lot of things.
Well, and you mentioned your thyroid, you mentioned leaky gut, and some of these things that aren't diagnosed or at least recognized can be a major factor in your chemistry, even in your moods, right?
Well, of course.
Yeah.
Because if you see do you know where serotonin and dopamine come from?
It comes from your, well, I think I learned from you, it comes from your gut, right?
Right.
Yeah.
That's not John making this stuff up, everybody. Go look at it. I always tell people like this.
I remembered that.
Don't believe me anyway.
Yeah.
I said, don't believe a word I tell you on this program. Go look for yourself, everything I'm saying.
Yeah.
Okay. That's how people buy in. Otherwise, you know, oh yeah, he sounds good, but I don't think that's true. Well, go find out.
Yep. Well, actually, can you explain a little bit about
Yeah, sure. Well, you know,
you've learned about that?
Serotonin, about 75 to 90% is manufactured in your gut.
Mm-hmm.
It goes up the vagus nerve and deposits it into your brain. Now, there's a couple of things that could be happening in there. First of all, your brain can have, you know, some cells that are damaged. Number one. Number two, you can have genetics that you're genetically predisposed for addiction. Now, just because you're genetically predisposed and you have the main gene, which is the DRD2-ALE1 variant gene, okay, doesn't mean you're going to become an addict. It means you may become an addict because there's such a thing as epigenetics, means the social environment can change the gene expression. So you don't have a death sentence for being an addict, but you have the propensity to be one. So when you start looking at people, their lifestyle and what they eat, most addicts are carboholics. Okay, they do a lot of carbs, they do sugars, processed food. I tell you what, people don't understand this. So they go, well, you know, everybody does that. I said, I tell you what, I got an idea for you. You have a car? They go, yeah. What kind of car? Gasoline, diesel, what kind of car? Gasoline. Tell you what I want you to do. I want fuel. I want you to put a new fuel in your car. Put diesel fuel in your gasoline engine and let me know how good your car runs. Well, you can't do that. It'll destroy the engine. It won't run. Well, same thing with the food you're eating.
It's a great analogy. Yeah.
I make it simple.
Yeah, right.
You know,
yeah.
Real simple for people. People like, everything sounds complicated to people, but there's simple ways of explaining it.
Mm-hmm.
You know, they go, what I say about fear, and they go, well, what do you mean? I'm afraid of this. I said, look, let me explain to you what fear means. FEAR, false evidence appearing real. Now, what do people do that are addicts? Most people, FEAR, they, excuse my expression, I'm not going to curse, but they said F everything and run.
Yeah.
And that's what people do. They run away from everything.
Yeah.
Okay. What causes depression?
Mm-hmm.
Simple. They live in their past. What causes anxiety? They live in the future. How do you fix both things? Well, one, there are no failures in your past.
Mm-hmm.
There are only lessons.
Mm-hmm.
The present is where you change the next moment to create your new future.
Yep.
If you live in the future, you're going to have anxiety.
It is very simple, right to the point, and I think that makes perfect sense, but it's just still hard for people to adjust their heads that way.
You know why? Because they're comfortable being uncomfortable.
Right.
I know that may not make sense to people, but it's the way it is. It's
I get it.
familiar.
Yeah, it's familiarity. Right, right. It's the
You know, it's
stepping out
like,
of your comfort zone. It's hard.
it's like people stay in relationships even though they're miserable and it's not working, just because they're afraid to go out in the world.
Right. Yeah. Yeah.
I don't want to get a new relationship. I got to go look at this, but I got to change everything. I don't know what to do. I might wind up, at least I know what I got. And they people settle.
Yeah. And
Okay.
breaking habits. And even one example, which you just made me think of because it's in the book, when you, when you're getting reaction and people were hyper and maybe it was the sugar effect, you say, hey, let's just take away the desserts. Let's stop the desserts and let's see what happens. And
I got tortured for that one.
but it made a difference, didn't it?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, the story is for
Yeah.
everybody who doesn't know what's going on.
Yeah.
I worked in a treatment center that was an indigent, it was a public program where they were homeless people that had HIV and they had a comorbidity. That means they had substance abuse and mental health issues. And we would get our food donated. I was a clinical director, and they would give them sugars and cakes and candies and cookies at lunchtime. Then after about a half hour, they would start acting out. Then we would put them on a bench with a sign around their neck saying, well, look what you're doing. All that. We shamed them, I said, what are we doing? So I went ahead and I explained I gave a lecture to all the clients. And I said, look, tomorrow we're not going to have any sugar. Are you guys all right with that? So, oh, yeah, after what you told us, yeah. But I forgot to tell the staff. And the staff got furious with me. They didn't have their cakes and their candies. The addicts did fine. So,
but you made your point. Yeah.
Yeah, I made my point.
Yeah.
So, and I tell people, they go, well, I don't know if that's true. I said, tell you what, give your kids some chocolates and sugars and at night, let me know how you do it for the rest of the evening.
Yeah. Yeah. It's a simple thing, but you made a point of saying, look at how your diet and the chemistry of your body reacts in ways that people just won't think of. It's very simple.
I don't know why people don't understand. Though our planet is a system. If we burn down all of what we're destroying now with all the Amazon, it's going to knock our whole ecosystem out of whack.
Mm-hmm.
Okay? This is an ecosystem. Everything works with everything else. You can't just fix one thing because you got 9 other things that are involved in that one thing.
Yeah.
I mean, but people don't get that. See, today's society, I want to take a pill and I want to just feel better. See, I don't want to take a pill. Look, I'm 76 years old. I don't have high blood pressure. I don't have diabetes. I don't take any medications. I work out. I do 40 laps in the pool. I work out with some weights. I do a little sparring here and there.
Still doing karate, right?
Yeah, a little bit.
Okay. Yeah.
Not the same as I used to because, I don't have to anymore. And, all that stuff,
Yeah.
Matter of fact, I competed when I was 72,
Wow.
fighting.
Hmm.
Yeah. I was going to compete again now. I want to compete at 80, I think. So,
That's great.
I do it for me, not for anybody else.
I'm going to check in with you back then and then. Yeah.
Right. The person I'm competing against is me.
Yeah.
Not
Right.
anybody else.
Right.
So, it's just, look, I tell people this all the time. You can have all the money in the world. I deal with a lot of multimillionaires for clients. They're not happy.
Hmm.
They're insecure. They feel lonely, some of them. They're not healthy. They spend most of the time going to doctors.
Yeah.
And I say, look, if you don't have your health, you don't have your wealth.
Right. Pretty simple.
If you don't do it now, guys, when are you going to do it? Listen, I could drop dead tomorrow, get hit by a bus, but at least I'm on the right path.
Yeah, you are. And I think you're making a big difference. And believe me, I enjoyed talking with you and reading your book. I got another book to read because there's a few of them that you've written. I just read the most recent one, but it was great. And on your website, there's a lot of information. It's John J. Giordano.
Yeah, John, the initial J, not J-A-Y, the initial
Okay.
J, Giordano.
John, the initial J, Giordano. It's Giordano.
Right.
Okay. And you've got all kinds of information on your website in the books, and the books are on Amazon.
There's so much stuff on there. I used to do plays. I used to do concerts. I had my own television show, call-in talk show on public television.
Mm-hmm.
I did a lot of stuff.
Yeah, you packed a lot in, and you're still going. That's great.
Listen, I'm 76. When you have all these years, you can do a lot of things.
And
I didn't
that
sit,
message.
I didn't sit quiet.
No. And never giving up is the big message from you, because there are so many people that I've talked to on this program. And I think it's the same thing. And once people come out, and it's so common to have people say that all I want to do is help other people through their substance abuse, through their addiction, through their problems. And I find that's a common driver here.
Yeah, but here's a common mistake also. Let me give
Yeah.
you the flip side.
Mm-hmm.
You only can take people as far as you are. All
Yeah.
right. I want to remain a student. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
Because the better I can get, the better I can help people.
Yeah.
And if you really want to get to know people, know yourself.
You got to fix yourself first. Yeah.
And you have to know yourself better,
Mm-hmm.
because we're basically all the same. People
Yeah.
think we're so different. We're not. We want to be loved. We want to be respected. We want to be appreciated. We want to be understood.
Yeah.
Okay. We want to feel family oriented. We want to feel all that stuff. We don't want to feel threatened by any. We're all the same.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Yeah.
So you speak from your heart, not from your head when you talk to people.
Yeah. Yeah. No, that makes perfect sense. Well, John, it's been a pleasure. Thank you so much
Thank you
for your time. Yeah.
I hope somebody listens, and we'll see what happens.
We will. And all right. Well, I will stay in touch with you. And
Okay.
I'd like to hear more about what's happening. I know the Ketamine Institute has been, just as you said, just 3.
Oh, we're taking off. Like, let me tell you,
Yeah.
we're not doing what we're doing. Nobody's doing.
Well, I want to check back in and see how things are going, and I'd love to have you back to give an update if you would.
Okay,
like to
you
do
got
that.
it.
All right, we'll do it. Well, thank you again, and
All righty.
we will talk to you soon. Thank you, everybody, for listening at Healing Voices. We'll see you all soon. Thanks.